All right, so J.D. Vance clearly sitting next to Donnie T there as Zelensky shows up in a suit, no tie. What did we just hear, and what came out of the Trump-Zelensky Oval Office meeting? Well, let's go through all of it. First things first, look, this Ukrainian disaster with Russia has for a very long time been what most mainstream media just doesn't want to tell you out loud, a proxy war. This has been a proxy war between the United States and the European Union against Russia to weaken a nuclear adversary on the global stage who is a big ally of North Korea and of China. And if you weaken Russia, who's also a big proponent of BRICS, the de-dollarization, and you weaken the axis of China, Russia, Iran being involved with not only manufacturing drones inside of Russia, but also working very closely in partnership with Russia and weaponry when it comes to potentially attacking Israel. You see this sort of broad, zoomed out situation of, okay, maybe it makes a little sense why the United States provides as much CIA intelligence, that's a little redundant, Central Intelligence Agency intelligence, but it's as much intelligence as we do to Ukraine. But it's not just intelligence, it's quite literally targeting. It is weapons authorizations. Will allow you to use the weapons there, but not there. Will allow you to strike there, but not there. The United States is essentially directing this war just using Ukrainian soldiers. So this is really important to remember. So Donald Trump says this war wouldn't have happened if he were in office, but then people wonder, would it just boil up into a larger aggression from Russia? Or if the war ended too prematurely by giving Russia the land that they wanted, would that end up just setting up Russia for more aggressive posturing in the future, especially in coordination with known state sponsors of terror like North Korea and Iran, as well as coordinating with China, maybe in taking over Taiwan? Who knows? These are all interconnected pieces. Now, all of that said and background set, let's talk a little bit about what was talked about this morning. So Zelensky showed up in a suit, no tie. Trump did, threaten and pause intelligence sharing after that February 28th Oval Office meeting where J.D. Vance says, have you said thank you once? We did end up getting a pause of intelligence sharing for about 1 week, and then we quickly got back to intelligence sharing. That has been threatened again as potentially being a tool or point of leverage now in negotiations with Ukraine. Because remember, Trump is trying to send a signal that this is not a European situation and a U.S. and Russia and Ukrainian situation. Instead, Trump is trying to signal this is U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. And I think the way he showed this most clearly today was his chief of protocol, Monica Crowley. She was responsible for greeting European leaders showing up and pulling up in their convoys at the White House. Usually, Trump would be responsible for meeting those folks, just like Trump met Putin on Friday. When Zelensky pulled up, Trump did end up meeting and greeting Zelensky. Now, this is interesting because it somewhat sends a signal that, Trump doesn't care as much about the European Union. Now, what's also worth knowing about this is Donald Trump's really clever in the way he kind of talks about weapon sales and weapon donations. And you should kind of know a little bit of the background about how this works, because Donald Trump says, oh, we were just donating weapons to Ukraine. We're not doing that anymore. Now we're selling weapons. We're no longer giving weapons to Ukraine. But you kind of have to understand how this works. The way this works is the United States funds NATO. We're the largest funder of NATO. Now, Donald Trump has negotiated and sort of twisted the arms of other European countries to contribute more to NATO, which is fantastic. Finally, a president has pulled this off. This is great news. You have to give the president credit where credit is due. This is great. But NATO basically then buys European and U.S. weapons and then turns around and gives them to Ukraine. So it's kind of true that the United States doesn't just donate weapons to Ukraine, but it's also kind of true that through NATO, we donate weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine can't really afford these weapons, let's be real. So, with this, Donald Trump says he'll be meeting with European Union leaders after his Oval Office meeting just now with Zelensky. He does suggest that there is a chance of a trilateral agreement. This is just a fancy way of saying an agreement between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States, but it doesn't look like it is going to be any kind of ceasefire. Donald Trump says he likes ceasefires, however, suggests that Putin and Zelensky might not be able to pull off a ceasefire. Trump says there's a good chance of ending the war now, but hopefully we can stop the deaths. Trump says there have been millions of deaths. I went ahead and fact-checked this. So far, there have been 250,000 confirmed Russian deaths and casualties at about 950,000. So if you look at casualties, yes, we're at about 1 million there, casualties being injuries, right? And per The Guardian, there have been about 60 to 100,000 Ukrainian deaths and about 400,000 casualties. Now, there are two things going on here. Number one is it's not uncommon for invaders to face higher deaths due to the entrenchments of existing Ukrainians. It's kind of like, the Alamo, when the Mexicans came with 1,800 to 6,000 soldiers to run over the Alamo, and you had 200, maybe even 180 soldiers defending the Alamo in an entrenched fort. You ended up having about 2 to 3 Mexican deaths per Alamo fighter death on the American side. This is, again, what it usually takes to take over an area versus being entrenched and being a defender. Anyway, Zelensky hopes for some form of diplomatic end, but be clear, Zelensky doesn't want to give up land. Zelensky doesn't want to give up land because most of that eastern region of Ukraine is where Ukraine's energy production is, in that Donbass region. This is where the money is for Ukraine. This is what can help keep Ukraine's economy going, which is exactly what Putin wants. Now, Europeans are worried that Putin doesn't just want the energy, that's the guise, that he's going to manipulate Trump into saying, hey, they just want the energy, let them have some energy and business deals, let them have some energy economy, and that's it. The European Union, they believe collectively that Putin is really just looking for a launch pad or an opportunity to attack more than just Ukraine and eventually attack Finland or Poland or otherwise in the future. It's worth also looking at, if you jump into what's circulating on social media right now, there is apparently a Gaz-71, this is an armored personnel carrier, driving around let's actually make that not loud and noisy, there we go, driving around or videoed, that just has an overlay of music, got it. Had a video of this armored personnel carrier driving around on the front lines in Russia towards Ukraine, and it has a United States flag and a Russian flag on the end of it. A lot of people think that this is part of Putin's propaganda machine. See, I was able to go to the United States, get the U.S. Army to roll out the red carpet for me. They rolled out the red carpet for me. I looked in Trump's eyes and I told him, I want land and I'm not doing a ceasefire. And so what do you then have? Then you have Trump saying, I don't think a ceasefire is going to happen. And yeah, there's probably going to be some territory swapping. And yeah, we said we were going to do aggressive secondary sanctions against Russia and there would be major consequences for Russia, but we're kind of walking that back as well. So when you combine that Putin propaganda of, look, Putin's kind of steamrolling Trump a little bit, at least in terms of this impression from the Russian side, right? Like Putin's kind of got Trump talking exactly what Trump wants or what Putin wants. And then you put this together with the red carpet imagery, the imagery of now U.S. flags on Russian vehicles, which, who knows, maybe those are just sort of rogue soldiers or whatever who decided to do that, or it's part of the Russian propaganda campaign. It kind of shows that, this is a tougher situation for Trump. Trump even mentions at this press conference, make sure to use Kevin's coupon code before Friday. It's coupon code JHOLE because it expires Friday, then there'll be a big price increase, and you want to get Kevin's 10-year buy list where he's got 10 stocks he's going to be holding for 10 years coming out starting this month and trickling out over the next 6 or so weeks. So make sure you're part of that. All the courses, the Alpha Report, the live streams every day, the private live streams and our course member live streams when the market is open and more. Get that all over at meetkevin.com. Just make sure you use coupon code JHOLE, which expires Friday and honor of Jackson Hole, of course. But anyway, no, Donald Trump actually said that he thought that ending the war in Ukraine would be a lot easier, that we'd be able to get this done much sooner. But the reality has been much more challenging, that this war wasn't his easiest. If anything, it might actually end up proving to be his hardest war to solve, which obviously isn't great. Donald Trump says that we'll talk more about troops and security guarantees later today. There's a lot of talk about potentially having U.S. troops as a second line of defense following sort of NATO or European troops, or U.S. troops inside of NATO operating in some form of defensive capacity, keeping in mind that there's a lot of sort of toeing the line here where Russia doesn't want Ukraine in NATO, but there's a lot of talk about having security guarantees that basically give NATO protection to Ukraine without giving NATO membership to Ukraine. So even talk about Article 5, protection of Ukraine, where an attack on one is an attack on all. This obviously would be very strong for Ukraine, is what Ukraine wants, and obviously something that Russia would not want. But that's why the Europeans are showing up today, because they want to make sure that Zelensky doesn't get pressured into giving up territory that ends up risking the sovereignty of other European countries. Then, Donald Trump says that he picks up on this Zelensky saying you can't have elections during a war. Trump says, sort of jokingly, wait, I could do that? I could stop elections during the war? Kind of leaning into this, like, staying in office, drama that there's been a lot of talk about. And, Trump's been kind of clear about, I don't know, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to run for a third term. I think he kind of likes and craves the headlines. But anyway, Zelensky's wife did give Trump a letter for Melania, thanking Melania for her letter to Putin about Ukrainian children. Basically, please be careful about killing Ukrainian children. At some point, there's also been drama about a story about Zelensky's wife buying a Bugatti for like 4 million euros. This mentioned a dealership in Paris, and it was found to be fake. The Instagram account from Jacques Barton was deleted after posting it. The headline also, if you could read French, included the following, which, I can't speak French. But anyway, this is basically a short description for your article, is the translation of this, or basically a... a short, it stands for, here's a short title for the article, suggesting that this was probably just like an AI news website that put this together. And the dealership that was cited in this actually filed a forgery complaint against, this sort of website or platform that puts this information together. So anyway, then Donald Trump says that, let's see here, we've got, then he gets into ranting about how mail-in ballots are really corrupt. He says he's pretty sure we're the only country that does mail-in ballots, so I fact-checked this, and he's wrong. Germany does mail-in ballots, Canada does mail-in ballots, UK does mail-in ballots, Switzerland does mail-in ballots, Australia does mail-in ballots. So, once again, a little oopsies there, but, I think sometimes the truth kind of misses Donald Trump, and he kind of doesn't care because it's useful for his base to kind of keep arguments going against mail-in ballots. He decries that mail-in ballots are a big issue and that Republicans should worry more about mail-in ballots than they should worry about, redistricting. I actually think that mail-in ballots, kind of interesting. I think they should just be like drop-off ballots. I think that could be kind of, like a nice compromise. That's sort of my opinion, because, we get mail-in ballots, and sort of just as a human, I like to throw in that, when I get a ballot, I sit there and I fill it out at home because I could do my research and fill out the ballot, and I could take my time, and I'm not like pressured at a polling booth to just go down the list and, just do all like R or all D or, whatever you want to do. You can actually take your time, fill it out, and then you can fold it up and sign it and seal it, and then you can go drop it off. So maybe we need drop-off ballots. I don't know. I'm a fan of that. And that's when people get into like ballot harvesting, though, where like you can kind of collect and drop off for or on behalf of other people. I wouldn't be opposed to like everybody individually has to drop off their own ballot. But anyway, that was Donald Trump kind of like hijacking the meeting a little bit to talk about that. The PM of Italy also spoke to reporters saying that there are no easy solutions Zelensky says we need everything. We need troops, weapons, a strong Ukrainian army, training, intelligence. We need everything. Trump says he'll call Putin after these meetings. Bottom line out of all of this, a lot of optimistic talk. I don't know that it's really going to get anywhere. I'm hopeful and optimistic, but I don't think Putin wants a deal. I think Putin wants to keep going until he gets the land that he wants. And Trump might be the perfect person to push Zelensky to take some kind of land swap deal. But Putin's not going to stop until he gets exactly the land he wants. And unfortunately, that does hand Putin a big win, which, again, just supports the aggression of countries like North Korea, China, potentially with Taiwan, sets a precedent for Taiwan, which isn't great. Let's land swap Taiwan. And then 90% of the world's semiconductor manufacturing is at risk. So a lot of potential issues there, but we'll see how it goes. That's what we heard today on Zelensky and Trump. And that gives you sort of a full breakdown of what's going on.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.